We have chapter 3 of the name of this book is Secret today. And it says, and now introducing Max Ernest. So there's the picture on that one, Max Ernest. Okay. So you remember last time they had that kit with all the vials or the little beaker type things in it, and it smelled like rotten eggs. Which was something they smelled in that house. So they're wondering what was in the vial. So let's see what this chapter says here. Question: what is not enough for one, just right for two, and too much for three? Answer: a secret. Max Ernest, 11-year-old aspiring stand-up comedian, had read the joke, really a riddle if you want to get technical, in one of his 17 joke books. And now he was trying it on each of his 26 classmates in turn. None of his classmates laughed or even smiled. Most of them were so tired of his jokes that they didn't bother to respond at all. Those who did said things on the order of, and whatever, and that's stupid, and no more jokes. It's so annoying, Max Ernest, and why can't you just have one name like a normal person? You or I would probably burst into tears if our jokes met with such negative reactions. But Max Ernest was used to it. He never let what other people said upset him. He was going to be the funniest and best stand-up comedian of all time. He just needed to practice. Max Ernest looked around the schoolyard for a student who hadn't heard his joke yet. There was only one. She was squatting by the edge of the soccer field, a baseball cap on the ground beside her. He didn't know her personally because they didn't have any classes together, but he recognized her on the basis of a certain physical feature: her big, pointy ears. Since I've already made the mistake of describing Cass's most identifiable trait, yes, her ears, I thought she never exposed them, but I guess I was wrong. I may as well describe our other hero, Max Ernest, for you. But remember what I said about forgetting what I said? Try to erase the image of Max Ernest from your head as fast as you can for your own safety. Aside from his small size, the first thing you would have noticed about Max Ernest was his hair. Each strand stood on end, as though he were a cartoon character who had just stuck his finger in an electrical socket. His hairstyle was not a fashion choice, it was a philosophical one. Max Ernest cut every hair on his head the exact same length because he didn't like to favor one hair over another. Hairs may be made of dead cells, he reasoned, but they're still growing things, and each one deserves to be treated fairly. If you think this point of view is a bit odd or eccentric, so strange, well, I'd have to agree. That hair is dead but still growing is what is known as a paradox, something that seems impossible but is nonetheless true. Max Ernest was very fond of paradoxes, and he was of all kinds of riddles and puzzles and word games. Max Ernest also liked math and history and science and just about any subject you can think of. Despite his diminutive stature, which means he's kind of a tiny little kid, Max Ernest attracted attention wherever he went. He couldn't help it. As you will soon discover yourself, Max Ernest was a talker, a big talker. He talked all the time, even in his sleep. His condition, as his parents called it, was so extreme that they'd taken him to numerous experts in hopes of finding a diagnosis. The first expert said he had attention deficit disorder. The second expert said the first was out of order. One expert said he was autistic, another that he was artistic. One said he had Tourette's syndrome, one said he had Asperger's syndrome, and one said the problem was that his parents had Munchausen syndrome. Still another said all he needed was a good old-fashioned spanking. They gave him pills to take and exercises to practice, but the more ways people tried to cure him, the worse the problem got. Instead of stopping his talking, each cure gave him a new thing to talk about. In the end, the experts weren't able to agree on a name for Max Ernest's condition, any more than his parents had been able to agree on a name for him. How Max Ernest Became Max Ernest, a short story. Max Ernest was a preemie. That is, he was born prematurely, about 6 weeks earlier than expected. Prior to his entering the world, his parents hadn't done anything to prepare for his arrival. They had no stroller, no crib, no annoying musical toys, no baby wipes, no box of diapers. There were still plenty of pointy, dangerous things around the house, and they had no name for their baby. As the lump of shriveled pink flesh that would become Max Ernest lay in the hospital incubator like a small chicken, or maybe a rabbit, roasted in a glass oven, his parents argued about what to call him. His mother wanted to name him after her father, Max, but his father wanted to name him after his father, Ernest. Neither parent would budge. Max Ernest's mother declared she would rather her child have no name at all than have a crusty old name like Ernest. His father swore that he'd rather have no child at all than that his child have a meager, mini, little name like Max. Being only a few days old, Max Ernest was unable to tell his parents which name he preferred, but that didn't stop them. When he cried, Max Ernest's mother took it as evidence that he hated the name Ernest and wanted the name Max. When he spit up on his chin, his father said it was a sign that he hated the name Max and wanted the name Ernest. Finally, a nurse threatened to put their child up for adoption if they didn't reach a decision, so Max Ernest's parents decided to split the difference and put both names on his birth certificate. But the argument left them so bitter and angry that they got a divorce as soon as they left the hospital with their baby. Now, 11 years old, Max Ernest has been able to speak quite clearly for a long time. But whenever his parents ask him which name he prefers, as they do every year on his birthday, he goes mute, meaning silent. He knows that to choose one name over the other is actually to choose one parent over the other. And like most children, he'd rather do anything than do that. Thus, Max Ernest has 2 names to this very day, and very likely will keep them for the rest of his life. The end of the short story. All right, I think we'll stop there. That's enough for today. So we know a little bit about Max Ernest. I think they're going to bring us back to when he sees Cass in the soccer field at the next part.